Hey guys, welcome back to Ambition.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Hello, it's Tiffany and
Alex. Hello.
Hello, and today we have a special guest for you. We have Umbar Shakir today, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. Umbar is an Imperial College graduate, and she's also a partner at a transformation consultancy. She has an extensive experience across the UK central government, social housing, international public sector, and also TMT sector. Her impressive consulting background includes roles at the Big Four. Beyond her professional expertise, Umbar is also a talented freelance digital artist and photographer with work published in major international fashion magazines. She even channels her creativity into designing skins for 3D virtual reality gaming via Second Life, blending her technical and artistic passions in unique ways. And drumroll for this, she's also a proud mom of a 17-year-old daughter. Welcome to Ambition.
Thank you. My bio makes it sound like I'm #nerd.
She loved AI as well. We should have mentioned.
Yeah. So nice. Thank you for inviting me. And nice to be here.
Yeah, it's really good to have you with us. You know, everyone always reacts like that to their bio. I think like it's funny being put on the spot and having your accomplishments read out to you as well, isn't it?
It is, and it's such a feminine trait to sort of, cringe, but actually, no, I'm going to own it today. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I've loved my journey, and I'm really feeling now I'm in my late 40s in my power. So I'm going to take it. Thank you, Tiffany.
Nice.
Let's get started. I saw a post that you put on LinkedIn. This was about a picture of your daughter, and you mentioned how you were born to loving and visionary immigrant parents, and how that little girl that you were was told she could be anything she wanted to be if she dared to pioneer and work hard. So let's kind of talk about your background a bit and how that's influenced the woman that you are today.
Sure. So I am London born and bred. I grew up in southwest London on a council estate to, as you say, immigrant parents. My parents are South Asian. My dad is from Pakistan. My mum has an Afghan background, and basically was really pushed to excel and think beyond our existing circumstances. So get educated. Don't tell people how they can define you. Don't let people define you. And my dad obviously came here in the 70s and had faced a lot of racism, and so was very, very keen that no, don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. Like you show them. So I had quite a feminist family, and just given that encouragement, that love, the belief, and to just be financially independent as well. When you're with a life partner, be a partner, be in a partnership. And so the outlook on the possibilities was amazing. And we were surrounded, I know council estates get a bad rep, but I was surrounded by very hardworking people. I had really good examples of honest, earning potential, and actually lots of examples of so many bright people around me who never got to reach their potential. And so I never took for granted opportunities that came my way. And that's not to say there weren't naysayers. There were people from my wider community of South Asians that said, girls don't do this sort of thing. Girls are homemakers. And I also had careers counsellors saying, yeah, don't aim too high, you'll just be disappointed. And boo.
Yeah.
So to just kind of hold your nerve and hold your own with that support of a family was really crucial. And so I always felt like, if I'm willing to put in the hard work and to take the opportunities as they come, I can go places. And so I had that sort of belief in myself and my abilities, but also my work ethic to be able to knuckle down and do stuff. And so, yeah, going to Imperial, which is at that point in time in the late 90s, was 97% male.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Because it's an engineering. It's an engineering.
I mean, it makes sense when you say it, but I hadn't realised that.
And you know, and then going into consultancy, which was mainly male dominated, and then being in the tech field, which is also, I still to this day, which baffles me at 20 odd years later, that I'm still the only female in the room sometimes. And so, you know, but I very early on, I've got 3 younger brothers as well. So I've always been in male dominated environments. So I'm quite comfortable in kind of going, yeah, where, you know, I don't subscribe to the men are from Mars and women are from Venus kind of, you know, ethos. We're all humans. We all bring different things to the party. We do get different social conditioning as we're growing up. But let's look beyond that. And, you know, I'm more about at work, particularly, where's the better idea? How do we get to the best ideas? And so wherever that comes from, I don't care. Like, I'm all about the best ideas win. So
I really like that. And I think, you know, when we had like an initial conversation, we talked about that. You talked about having male mentors as well. And that was definitely something I wanted to pick up on, because I think a lot of the thinking is that you need to find a female mentor. And sometimes, especially if you're in a room where it is men only, you can't do that. So what's your experience been of kind of having the male mentorship?
Yeah, amazing. Like, you know, and I did, not to say that I didn't have female mentors, but it was hard coming up through the big firms to see very many women in leadership, and the few that were around I latched onto, but then I kind of, you know, I was thinking more about role models and who I aspire to be like, rather than gender. And obviously gender absolutely makes a difference, because our lived experiences and how we see the world, how we experience the world is different between men and women. However, I really feel in any kind of ism that's out there, whether it's racism or sexism or, you know, discrimination against your sexual orientation, whatever your ism is, we need allies. And so, you know, finding the people who would champion me, my values, they were in alignment with sort of, you know, I could look at them and go, oh, I want to be like them when I grow up, you know. Surrounding yourself with those people is really important. And I think, you know, for me, I've always had this insatiable curiosity about how did leaders become the leaders that they are today. So I'd want to, a bit like your opening question, I'd be like, what was your background? How did you come through the system, you know, and what were your lived experiences, and what can I learn from that? What could I adopt or adapt from their journey for myself? So I think it's really important finding those mentors, but not restricting yourself to, it has to be somebody just like me, because actually in your learning, diversity of thought, diversity of experiences can really help propel your growth and your personal growth. And so, you know, I was lucky enough to come across some of those men along the way who kind of, they were always saying to me, as like, don't let, if somebody's cut you over in a conversation, don't let them take your agency away in that moment. Stand your ground and say, please, can I finish my point? So even if people are being discriminatory, or they are overpowering, or they can cut you off or dismiss you in a conversation, which happens in female lived experiences quite often, in that moment, don't give your power away as well. Step into your power and really tap into your own vocabulary and developing that. And, you know, there were some men who said along the way, and if I'm in the room, I'm with you too. So that was really important for me.
I like that. And I like, you know, I'm always interested in people's background, because I think, you know, we all start from somewhere. So I'm always interested to know how your childhood shaped you, because I think we always have this sometimes chip on our shoulders. And I remember the story you told me about you being in Woolworths with your mom. And I'd love to, if you can share that, and how that's kind of shaped your mindset also going into work and into your career.
Yeah. Oh, that gets me a little bit. Yeah. You sprang that on me, Tiffany. Yeah, no, I think the context in which I was relaying that story was really about what you prioritize, you know, whether it's in your work or your life. And I think I always had instilled in me social conscience and responsibility for community, and, you know, having a purpose bigger than yourself.
Okay.
And in that self and what you start to prioritize. And I think that the Woolworths story is a focus point, and I will get to that story in a second. But actually, motherhood was my second focal point in my life that helped determine what I give my energy to. And so the Woolworths story was I was a young child. I only had one brother then, and we were in Woolworths, and my mum, you know, was doing her shopping, and I went and ran to the toy section, and so did my little brother, and we both came back with a toy each. And I saw my mum look down at her check, and she started counting her money. And it was quite an early stage to realise that actually, my mum's struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And to see her struggle, and she was quite pained because she knew in that moment she couldn't buy both of our toys. She couldn't afford to buy both of our toys. So she knelt down and she looked at me and she said, "You're such a lovely little girl, and you're a good big sister. And, you know, if you let me buy your little brother his toy this week, I promise you I'll come and get this for you next week."
Oh.
And in that moment, all I ever wanted to be when I grew up, like my goal in life at that point in time, was I want to be able to go into a shop and never have to count my money. I just, that's what I wanted for my life. I didn't want to be a millionaire. I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want to, you know, sort of, I have to be the best of the best of the best. But I knew, like, there was just something in me. I knew that I just wanted to be comfortable, whatever I did. My goal was I want to be able to go into Woolworths and not have to count my money. And that focuses your mind a bit. And also, you know, like I said, seeing so many bright people, you know, from lots of different backgrounds. Tiffany, did you say your background's Nigerian?
Not Nigerian, yes.
Yeah, so I grew up, my one side, my next door neighbours were Nigerian, the other side were Ghanaian.
Oh,
No, I know. But while on the surface they would tease each other,
yes,
we were very united and very loving. And, you know, people would, if somebody was in labour, you put your coat on over your pajamas and you're driving them to the hospital. So that sense of community, open doors, but also seeing very bright people. You know, Nigerian uncle was a bus driver, and Ghanaian auntie would work in a cheese factory during the day and make wedding cakes at night. But they were so bright. They were having philosophical debates in our front room and talking about theology and
the Bible.
The Bible and Islam and everything. And to be surrounded by really people who didn't meet their potential, it instills a sense of, oh my God, I have an obligation to, if an opportunity comes my way, I'm going to take it. So, you know, that it was an amazing childhood, actually, like really, really good upbringing. Yeah.
But I'm also interested, I suppose, when you let's transition that to motherhood. Let's talk about how that shaped you, and then you then becoming a mum, and, you know, this new identity.
Yeah. Well, that confidence and that sort of knowing my identity and being really comfortable in sort of the duality of, you know, growing up in London, but having an Asian, you know, background, and my parents always tried to say, like, you know, best of both worlds. But also there was a sense of motherhood is one of the most important things we can do, because we're raising the next generation of humans. And so I took my responsibility of motherhood really, really seriously. Like, I am here to fashion this human character, their values, their character, their disposition. And I actually took 2 years off of my career to do that. Now, part of it was because I wanted to. Part of it, though, was that 17 years ago, there was a lot more discrimination, a lot less channel to challenge the status quo in consulting, particularly, because everybody was saying, well, why don't you do a year in marketing or a year in resource management, or offering me demotions? And that wasn't acceptable to me at that time. So actually I took that opportunity, saw the discrimination as an opportunity to actually focus on my child. And that then resonated when I did come back into consulting, and it wasn't with the bigger firms, it was with the smaller firms, that I crafted my own flexibility. And I think for motherhood and working, and this fallacy that you can have it all, because I do think it is a bit of a fallacy. I think you discern where you put your energy. And what it did for me was I say this now when I'm mentoring, you know, other mothers in the firm that I work at, or my friends or my nieces or my cousins, that choose what you're going to make your core. Is the core of your life around your motherhood and you fit everything around that core? Or is your core your career and you will fit everything around your career? Because if you try to do everything and work-life balance, then you're always out of balance. That's my lived experience, is that there's no such thing as that balance. I think you have to ruthlessly prioritize. And I think being a mother, and I'm so sad about the disservice that we do about bouncing back from pregnancy. And no. I like, you know, how do we reframe that as to new lessons learned and propelling and moving forward?
Wow.
Because that motherhood journey really made me realize that there were some things that I used to focus on pre-motherhood that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. How do people think about me? How am I seen? How many rungs of the ladder have I got through on the career ladder, etc.? And I kind of went, do you know what? Focusing back and stripping it back to my sense of purpose and social responsibility, my sense of wanting to do meaningful work and deliver impact for my clients and my teams and my community. Really, like, motherhood helped me, and I made motherhood my core. And I have no judgment about whether you make motherhood or your career or something else your core. That's your choice. And what an amazing time to live in, where we have those choices. Make your choice and then pick your trade-offs, because it is a series of trade-offs. And you know, there's been times in my career where I've had stresses and frustrations when, you know, the morning that you're getting ready and your daughter says, "Mummy, I've got insect day today," and you're like, "What's insect day?" It's like, insect. Oh, crap. Okay, and I've got no childcare, and you know, and I luckily at that point in time I had a female client who was very open to bringing children into the workplace, actually, to inspire them and show them, you know, like, bring your children to work sort of days. And so I was able to take her into my client site and office.
Wow.
But I had guys teasing me and going, "Oh, not going to get Mother of the Year award then, are we?" And I was just like, "Oh." And so there are moments of righteous rage. and expressing that rage and helping to change and turn attitudes, because I was like, oh, and you know, who looks after all the children admin and the school admin for you at home? How you know, who's doing the laundry and your clothes magically appear in your you know, wardrobes? And so, you know, like the headspace that it takes for motherhood and working and, you know, managing life admin, it's not easy. And so let's you know, let's bust that myth and start to acknowledge the reality of it's hard, it's difficult, and you know, but you've got choices. So let's make some judgments. Let's discern where we're going to put our energy and decide how we act.
I think, you know, what you're saying about deciding on your core is like a new way of framing it. I haven't heard anyone else frame it like that. I've heard people talk about finding your purpose and things like that. But I think that is a really nice illustrative way of explaining it to people of how you do pick your battles and that there will always be those trade-offs. And I have to say, I love what you say about bouncing back, because I read a post on social media the other day that said something along the lines of, there is no bouncing back. You can't go back to what it was before. That is an impossibility. For one, you know, when they talk about it in a physical sense, like your body has changed completely. You can't yearn for what you had previously, your body, your life, that's all gone. You have to kind of remake a new life on the other side of it. But also, otherwise you go mad.
And what's our obsession with yearning to be young? Looking young, feeling young, going back to something from before. Yes. Life happens to us and we grow and it propels us forward. And I honestly, I can hand on heart say, I was a better consultant for being a mother, because the finances that I was having to juggle, the knowledge that I was having to impart to this new human being, the nourishment that I had to give her, both from my body and, you know, cooking for her and you know, and caretaking. And I think, and I don't think it's by accident that in my leadership team, a lot of pastoral care type approaches come to me and other females in our firm. So that compassion, that empathy, the approachability, the wisdom, oh my God, the wisdom. We're not celebrating. These are things we should be flipping celebrating. Like that, you know, and so, yeah, why are we yearning to go back? We are propelling forward. We are in power. We are. And it was funny, I joked once, while I was pregnant, one of my colleagues, lovely gentleman who wanted to help me with my luggage because we were traveling to Sheffield. And he said, he was so sweet in the way he said, in no way am I diminishing your capabilities or anything. You know, you're not a damsel in distress. I'm not trying to rescue you or anything. I'm not trying to be a savior, but, you know, can I help you with your bag? And I went, too flipping right. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
My bag. And he said, in no way am I suggesting that I'm superior. And I joked and said, oh, like when you can grow a human inside you and push it out of a very small orifice and then nourish it with the right nutrients, because when that child is ill, my body makes the right antibodies for that child in my breast. When you can do all of that, we'll talk about maybe being on a par, but I'm far superior to you. I'm so, and I don't think we, you know, we lean into the power of that motherhood and that's not to say that anybody who isn't a mother, who is a woman, isn't powerful. We all have that divine sort of feminine energy and power within us. It doesn't just come from motherhood. But let's not look at motherhood as a disabling factor on our careers.
Yeah,
it's more skills. It's more skills. Let's tap into those skills and use them to our advantages.
I think that's really good. I think what you said there, Amber, around the confidence post-motherhood, because I think motherhood can be a time where women do lose their confidence, sadly, which is understandable. You know, your body's changed. You then have this other person to look after. So you're navigating that. But I love that you're seeing the benefits of it. And I think that's how women can then translate that to the benefits they bring post-motherhood to the workplace and asking for their worth. Like I said, things are negotiating, even having less time. It's not always a bad thing, because human beings don't make the most of time. So sometimes we need that reduction of time to then start to prioritize, right? And choose.
And choose. And I think work culture, particularly in the West, is so obsessed with urgency. And let's face it, most of us are not life-saving surgeons or firefighters, or do you get what I mean? It's like office work. The majority of the work that we do, I think we need to learn to challenge requests that come in from management or clients or customers to go, can this wait till tomorrow? Can this wait till next week? Do we have to do this right now? And that confidence to challenge that, but also setting your boundaries as well. So I used to, while Lana was younger, I would absolutely say between 5 and 8 o'clock is my daughter's time. And you're welcome to email me in that period and try and contact me, but I'm not going to give you my time. That time is for my daughter. And so, but I will log on once she goes to sleep. I will log on for another hour that evening. So my work pattern's different, but being transparent and open, whether that's with clients or whether that was with my own teams, when we'd kick off new projects and new team members, I would say, look, this is how I work. I'm not expecting you to be logged on at 8 o'clock at night. However, my circumstances, because I prioritize between 5 and 8 o'clock for my daughter, I'm gonna give some time back a little bit later in the day. Or you might see me checking emails early in the day. School run or commute. But those are choices, and we've got to be really mindful about where we put our energy, what we've made our core, and then structure our days so that we aren't burnt out, depressed, numb, lack of motivation. I felt all those things. Like I'm talking now, she's 17. I've been through that stage. But the first year of motherhood, especially when I was being offered demotions and jobs that weren't even my job, it was really demotivating. And I also suffered from postpartum depression. And people don't even equate the person that I am now with somebody who couldn't even open their front door or was sat at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I could do everything for my daughter. I could change her nappy. I could do everything for her was there. But I'd get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and be beating myself up because I hadn't brushed my teeth that day. Mm-hmm. And so, we've kind of got to be a little bit kinder to new mothers and that motherhood journey, to mothers who weren't able to become mothers or carry to term, or to women going through fertility treatments, and all of those things that don't always culminate in a motherhood journey. But
I'm quite aware, actually. Sorry, it's Baby Loss Awareness Week this week as well, so very appropriate to be talking about that.
And my best friend has had 5 miscarriages, and so she has 3 beautiful children as well. But as female experiences in the workplace, there's a lot of emphasis on motherhood, and I'm conscious I'm on the Mambition podcast. But there's so many lived experiences of motherhood and femininity and what it is to be a woman at work that I think we need to lean into more and talk about more and have that dialogue around.
Yeah, I think that openness is really important, isn't it? And I think it's only by that conversation in the workplace that we see changes to policies that support women. I think there's just been the sort of recognition that women who have suffered a miscarriage should be given some sort of leave from work. Before, I think people have always had to be off, just taken sick or struggled through it. And really, the more that those experiences are talked about. And I think also around motherhood, the more those experiences are talked about, the more that we can actually celebrate, like you said, the skills that they bring to women, the skills that you develop as a human through going through that. And it shouldn't be a cap on our career. It shouldn't be seen as something we hide and that we should try and just work as though we haven't had a child. We should be able to use those experiences, grow in our career, and not have to hide it, not have to hide leaving to collect them from school, because the workday doesn't support parenting at all. You know, if you both work full time, who's meant to collect your kids from school? Somebody's got to do it.
And you know, the reality of culture, and while you know, in my childhood I had feminist parents who were pushing me to be an equal in whatever partnership I go into, and relationships that I have, we're not teaching them what it means to adapt to a working mother, and they've got the examples of their fathers who weren't playing those roles, and you know, women were homemakers a lot more in my mum's generation, and I almost feel like they're if we look at, you know, sort of 60s and 70s as women fighting for the rights, like, you know, like really, how do we start? I should have the right to a bank account and a credit card and pay parity and job opportunities. They fought for our rights. My generation, I'm Gen X, and you know, we kind of were the pioneers of applying those newly held rights, like we're now putting those into practice. But actually there's now this almost this false sense that we've got gender parity now, and we don't. We're 132 years away from gender parity still. And what I'm hearing from new mothers, you know, in the workplace is, when push comes to shove though, if the nursery calls up and says your child is sick, I'm the one running to the office. My husband doesn't suddenly give up and go running. You know, I'm taking annual leave for children's sick time to stay at home, or I'm trying to struggle and work from home while they're sick. And it's horrible because I'm feeling guilty about not being fully present at work or fully present for the child. And so there's a bit of a reality check about society, culture, norms, etc. And what can work policies not just help mothers, but parents? So paternal, you know, work. When I started at Gate One, which is the company I'm at now, I started before we were even called Gate One. We were starting up as a firm, and you know, and I said to the founders, would you be open to me doing a 4-day week? And they went, well, not sure who's going to buy a consultant for 4 days a week, but if you can sell it, do it. And so I had these allies. I didn't make it their problem, but I found clients who were willing to buy 4 days a week. Now it is normalized in our firm that men can do a 4-day week because they want to spend more time with their children.
Amazing.
And so pioneering that pathway, not just for women, but for men, this benefits men as well. And then we also had a scenario where there was a consultant of ours who was living with his grandma and needed to take some time to care for her. So he went for a short period of time, went part-time as well. So it isn't just about motherhood. You know, if we can be more inclusive of motherhood, we start to be more inclusive of so many family dynamics, intergenerational relationships, caring, people who are long-term sick, etc. And how is that not a great thing? Like, we should be so much more human. We spend so much time at work. How can we be more human and present? You know, as a lot of companies talk about authentic self, but then the constructs and the policies and are you really telling the truth when you say you want us to be our authentic selves? Because I've code switched. People on my council estate didn't speak like this, you know, and I'm wearing Western clothes, and you know, when we're not seeing very much warm weather now, but when it's warm weather, I want to wear Asian clothes because they're cooler and, you know, they're just more
In both
comfortable.
senses of the word.
Yeah, and they're pretty. They're really
Yeah.
pretty too. But we do code switch. You know, you're not in Nigerian garb right now. I'm not wearing Asian. We're all code switching, and I'd love to get to a point where we don't have to code switch as much, and we're not putting on so many masks. And you know, if we can do something around motherhood around that and show the way, then that helps with neurodiverse communities to be less putting on a mask, or you know, our friends who are, you know, in the LGBTQIA plus communities, you know, to be their authentic selves. So I think it's just beneficial for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and go ahead, Tiffany. Go on.
No, it's okay. No, that's really interesting. I think, and I'm always thinking about in this current era, I think a lot of mothers have been pushed out of the workplace. I mean, even just by doing my ambition, we've come across mothers who are now, you know, turning to entrepreneurship. They're starting their own businesses simply because they want that flexibility. But I'd love to hear from your perspective as to women who do want to stay in the workplace right now. Do you have any, you know, advice, any tips for those women of how they can navigate the workplace in this day and just make the best of their careers?
I think do what my parents told me to do, which is don't be defined by what other people's norms are.
Okay.
Make the ask, pioneer, and
Sorry,
I get that.
Just very quick, I think what I was trying to also understand as part of that question is this idea of code switching. I think because I do believe there is a corporate game that you do have to play or get to a level where you can then turn around and tell everybody what to do. So I'm interested to know, because I think, I mean, I come from a Nigerian background, so I was told, you know, go to work, be quiet, do the work, and then you'll be recognized. So, you know, I suppose I'm trying to understand now, for younger women, younger mothers going to workplace, do you have any advice on how they can kind of get ahead and play the game a bit, but still authentic?
I think there's something about the question about agency, but also what I was starting to say about not being defined by societal norms, but that pioneering takes energy. Yeah. So that's going to be emotional labor that you have to spend to pioneer and make asks. So I asked for the four-day week, and you know, I then had to find the clients who would pay for that, and actually it worked out in clients' favors as well, because some clients can't afford consultants. Right. So it helped with affordability for certain clients as well. But I think making the ask, recently one of my colleagues said, what if I could work a 4-day week, but instead of doing 4 days continuously, I have a chunk of the middle of the day to do school run? Could that work? And there was, I'm not going to lie, there was a bit of umming and ahhing in the firm. And well, HR came to the conclusion, let's try it. Let's trial it. Let's see. And, you know, you don't ask, you don't get. And sometimes you ask and you don't get. And that's what's making a lot of women turn to entrepreneurship, you know, and flexible working, because they've made the ask and the corporate said no. And, you know, or they're dismissed as that's not workable. But actually there's something about what can we do as women to almost do the preparatory work, find the client that will do 4 days, find the client that's okay with you not being there for 2 hours in the middle of the day. You know, like if you can do that, then you can prove it a little bit, because what works is bringing it back to commerciality. They are companies. They're not here for us. We are here for them. We are here to make them money. Wow. So where do you find the win-win situation for what your ask is and what benefits there are for your company as well? Because I think sometimes we can go in with a demand and not build the right business case for it from the firm's perspective. So bringing it back to commerciality, I've done that with racism as well, where I've said, you do realize there are clients who will not tap into us if they think that there's prejudice or biases within our, like, you know, we're also putting off buyers, and that losing sales resonated with people, not just doing it for the good of humanity.
Mhm.
And that's the game that we're in. The game we are in is that they're in it for the money, and you are an employee, and you are an asset, and you are a unit of value for them. So how do you demonstrate the value? And I think bringing forward and claiming the new skills, the new capabilities that we have through motherhood, and monetizing that as an asset for the firm is really important as well, because okay, so you can prioritize better. What does that mean in the workplace? Okay, so you know, you're far more ruthless in your organization skills now because you're juggling so much more. You know, how does that benefit in my role description, or for my client, or for my firm, and for my fellow colleagues as well? I think that's the game you have to play, which is articulating the ask as a win-win.
Wow.
But Tiffany, that's really hard. Like, emotional labor to change the status quo is really hard. Sometimes I decide I'm not going to call out that racism, because you know what, I'm triggered, and that takes a lot of energy, and I'm just like, sucks to be you, man. Like, just sometimes you have to walk away from the racist. Sometimes I will express my righteous rage and go, oh yeah, well, how does your laundry get into the I was angry. I might have been able to do that in a more constructive way, but I'm also sorry, not sorry. Like, you were being an absolute a-hole I'm doing the best I can. And do you know what? Do you know how hard it was to have to bring my daughter into work today? That you then turn around and go, not getting Mother of the Year awards. Yeah, well, you know, I don't know what awards you're up for either. So sometimes expressing it is okay too. Let's forgive ourselves for expressing our righteous rage. Let's not carry the guilt all the time. You know, do the best you can do. Play the game that is, you know, the reality of being in corporate. Or how amazing that you've got choices that you can make that weren't open to our mothers and their mothers, that we can start our own businesses. And, you know, there is, you know, out of necessity comes innovation. You know, the creativity that I'm seeing with female entrepreneurs, and, you know, the flexibility that they're demanding, and a bit of a brain drain, you know, post-COVID. We were predicting 2 years ago, I was doing a piece of work with Virgin around employee experience, and we were predicting, there were all the signals there that the next wave of leavers, big leavers, are going to be women from the workplace.
Wow.
And that costs industries money. So monetizing it, how do you retain all of that skills, capability, and investment that you've put in that asset? Because that's what we are.
Yeah.
You know, how do you retain that for the firm? And I think understanding some of those dynamics for women as well will help them to articulate their ask better. So find the vocabulary to do that, or find women who found the vocabulary and learn from them.
There's a big push to get everybody, you know, you see it on social media a lot at the moment about the push to get people to return to the office.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that has a big impact on mothers in particular, and their flexibility, their work-life balance. Do you think that that's partially one of the things that's driving this exodus of women from the workplace as well?
I think it plays a part, but I wouldn't overemphasize the return to work as being the reason why women are leaving. I think there are new generations of women who are more in their agency and power. They're not the put your head down and get on with stuff and you'll be rewarded. They're going, no, I'm gonna vocalize this after Me Too. There's so much more vocalizing of no, that's not acceptable behavior. No, that's not acceptable. No, why are things like this? So there's a generation of challenges of status quo coming through as well. It's a movement that is building towards wanting to ask for more from their employer as well. So, you know, there's studies I saw on a post that people who are over 50, their tenure at work is actually, it was from Yasmin who introduced us. Yas was saying people over 50 stay in tenure of jobs on average of 10 years, but people, you know, in their 20s and 30s, their average tenure is 2 years. So people aren't looking for a job for life anymore. They're looking for, you know, that meaning, more purpose at work. You know, the in the 70s and 80s, not many people were talking about meaning and purpose at work.
Yeah.
I get my meaning and purpose elsewhere, you know, whether that's through my church or my religious community, or whether it's through my friends and my family connections, or, you know, and now we've got people moving away from religious and big community. There's more isolation of people. We're not in extended families anymore. And so we've almost made it our employer's responsibility to give us meaning and purpose at work. And so, but with that then comes demands. And so I do think, while yes, going back to the office, but I'm actually one of the people who believes for certain types of jobs, it's super important to have that community, to have a sense of human connection. But I also believe in flexibility too. So how do we get both? So I'm not one of these, you know, if you come back to work, if you come back to the office, that's it, like, you know, end of flexibility. No, we pre-COVID, we had flexible working too. You know, it isn't just about being at home that gives you that flexibility. It's about the balance of that. And it's discerning which, because I think there are some jobs that lend themselves to totally remote working. That's totally fine. Some jobs need a hybrid of face-to-face and you know, remote working, and some things need full-on face-to-face. So, you know, I think it's a factor, but I do think that choices and legislation and policies and, you know, social media and you know, like other women empowering women networks, all of these things are factors in a bit of that exodus. But I think most of the exodus I've seen of people is feeling dismissed by their leadership. So not being heard, not being understood, and their requests being dismissed. And, you know, they might not articulate it in that way, but most of the conversations I've had with women who are starting up on their own have just said, look, it's just too hard to try and fight all the time for what I think is the right thing to do. So if I have to fight for everything, am I in the right place? And because there are options, women are taking them. And I think that's fantastic. That's great. So it's almost like a symbiotic thing about what do leadership need to do? What are women empowered to do? How are women's exodus going to change leadership? How will change leadership maybe retain more women in the workforce? It's a movement. It's not a moment that's going to happen for us where suddenly we've got gender parity and an understanding for minority groups at work.
Are there any books that you would recommend for women to be reading, or that you've read and positively impacted your life?
Yeah, definitely. And not everybody subscribes to, you know, these philosophies. Are like I you know, the books around there's one called Righteous Rage, or Rage Becomes Her. It's about Rage Becomes Her is a really good book. And Lean In. But having said that, there's a lot of pushback to lean in as well. And so, you know, I think with any of these sorts of books, I've I've most recently in my personal growth been looking at the writings of Mo Gaudat when he went through his grief as a parent, and you know what he needed, and radical acceptance and thought transforming, because we are socially conditioned, you know, to be kind, be nice, be, you know, virtuous. And, you know, my daughter at the moment for her university applications is writing an essay, and she's looking at, we've all grown up on Bollywood movies, but she's looking at the changing role from the 1950s to now of women in Bollywood, and
that's so cool.
It's really cool, and how cinema affected society, but also societal changes and societal movements changed cinema. And I'm drawing parallels to that in the workplace as well, about how can we change our social conditioning ourselves. So, you know, radical acceptance of, I think a lot of pioneering mums felt pain because we were resisting the reality of, why aren't our husbands or our partners leaning in? And why isn't things equal? Why aren't things equal? And why am I being offered a job that isn't my own when I'm coming? Because the big firm that I used to work for said it's to help your brain get back into gear.
Oh.
And I was like, she grew in my uterus. She didn't grow in my brain. And, you know, and not saying that motherhood affects different bodies and different people in different ways. And actually, you know, now looking back on it, I go, it did affect my brain, but it didn't mean I couldn't do my job.
Yeah.
It didn't mean I couldn't do my job. But there's an acknowledgement that, yes, you know, the brain function and neuroscience does change, but then adapt to that. And I demand workplaces to be inclusive of that. I don't want to be a caricature of a man.
Yeah. And I think as well that, you know, if there was some agency to that, of two-way conversation around what do you need now you've returned to work, that's one thing. You know, I'm very sleep deprived. I feel like I could use a slightly different job for a while. You know, that would be one thing. But coming back and being told that is another very discriminatory approach to take.
Exactly. And I think it comes back to that sort of choices, and, you know, the policies that enable people, you know, to be their more of their whole selves at work. You know, I think those are really important. But those are the two books that are really big for me. There are other books as well that I draw parallels from. So Creativity Inc., which is the Pixar method of creativity and how they approach creativity and how they've been so successful with hit after hit after hit. But drawing from some of those things about how they get to the best ideas, and that ruthless prioritization that and focus that came from being a mother, Motherhood plus Creativity Inc., and then obviously being in the zone of watching lots of Pixar, like that was actually really quite influential on how I was approaching work thereafter, because I was valuing. So like I said, we're assets and we're units of value, but of that value, do I really value long hours and lots of grafting, low value kind of work, or do I value really good ideas? And do I value good solutions? And I don't know. I don't care how you get to the solution, and I don't care who comes up with the best idea. And that came from Motherhood and Pixar. Like, so,
okay.
So, you know, but I'm happy to, you know, as a follow-up or when you release the podcast, if you want a reading list from me, because I've got a whole shelf. I'm looking at it over there of things that helps. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about radical acceptance and thought transforming and manifestation. Those are things that have really helped me as well. And it's almost overcoming your programming, really. And if we think about the programming of being raised girls and women, there's a lot to do to then code switch in the workplace that overcomes some of our programming. And how can we be more authentic to ourselves and not mask and not code switch, But to do that, we need to reprogram some of the detrimental things that we do to girls as they're growing up. You know, we tell them to be careful in the playground, and you know, or you know, don't climb so high, don't go so high. Whereas we're telling boys to climb higher. Yeah. Oh, he'll fall down, he'll bounce back. It's all right. It's okay. You know, and whereas we're like, oh, poor daughter, poor little girl. And we're raising damsels to be in distress and be saved and rescued. Like we've got to do that less. And there's really two other good books, Raising Boys and Raising Girls. And it talks about the neuroscience and the biochemistry of, because boys and girls are different. We are different. And so it taps into this, it's almost like strength-based parenting for the genders. Okay. But also, how do you raise boys and raise girls so that there isn't that disparity as they grow up? So we're not compounding issues. So they're really interesting books that bring science and culture and society together. You know, my friend has 2 sons, and she grew up in a household of sisters mainly, and she was just like, I don't understand my boys. And she's going, they're not listening to me, they're not. And when she went on the course, there's a course that is Raising Boys and Raising Girls, and she was just like, oh, I even understand my husband better now. Like just the brain science behind it. Those are really interesting, because it gives you insight into how we've been raised, but also how our biochemistry makes us who we are. And then therefore you can decide, you have these light bulb moments of, okay, I need to make these adaptations, but I'm going to ask for these adaptations from my employer. And they should be more inclusive of me being me. And so, yeah, it's not just about motherhood and books about feminism. I love it. There's a variety of sources where I get my inspiration from.
I think that's a must for us, the Raising Boys and Raising Girls, don't you, Tiffany? Because we've talked about this quite a bit about, you know, I want to raise a boy. I only have a boy, but I want to raise him to be supportive of women, to be a feminist little boy. I don't want to repeat the kind of mistakes of the past. And Tiffany, you've talked a lot about making sure that your little girl maintains her amazing self-confidence that she has at the moment, and not letting that be squashed out of them. So I think these sound like really important books for us.
Yeah, they are. And I really do feel like while we as women and, you know, feminist movement has been making lots of demands, I know the world is designed by and for men, and, you know, even in comparators that we've been talking about today, about the asks that you make in the workplace, what's the standard? It's a mainstream white male. That is the standard that we then, you know, inclusive of we have to work around that standard. But even in raising strong, confident women, we have overlooked a generation of men and what they needed. Yes. In terms of their social conditioning and programming to be able to handle strong work. The amount of times that I've had people in meetings say the most shocking things, you know, about like you. I once was delivering training, and a senior C-suite member of the team just shouted at me and said, I don't want to learn this, and look at the confidence on her, like it was a negative thing, like how dare this woman be this confident.
Wow.
And I was just like, the flip. And thankfully there were other allies in the room who, you know, men and women, who went, you carry on, Amber, I want to learn this, you carry on. And
what did he do?
It was just like,
did he leave?
Or he was really, he muttered. I could hear him almost heckling.
Oh my God.
And you know, or I've literally had men in meetings put up their hand and say, as a man, I know more about this than you, about technical architecture.
Wow.
again, luckily there was somebody else in the room who said, you might want to look her up on LinkedIn before you say nonsense like that. And you know, I know, and
the anger.
But you know what? They were socially conditioned with that male mainstream standard and haven't made the space or the room to be inclusive. And so we can't just focus on ourselves when we're talking about empowerment for women and parity in the genders. There's work we've got to do with our men, and you know, I can understand why there are disenfranchised or men who feel disenfranchised when you're still sat there going, you know, once had somebody say to me, do you know how hard it is to be a 30-something-year-old male at work now? And I honestly, like, I had to bite my tongue and just go, tell me more. Explain that to me, because in my lived experience, the whole world is designed for you. But there was this, what was acceptable before is now no longer accepted, but we've had no training. No one taught us what is now acceptable and not acceptable. You're angry. You're righteously angry about certain things, but nobody taught me how to be different. Like, and so we've got to the changes that we make, we've got to, in raising boys and raising girls, and maybe there's something about raising women and raising men, you know, and not in a rearing sense, but in an elevating sense. How do we elevate women? How do we elevate men to be better allies? How do we all be more inclusive at work? Can only be like the best intention that we try to make in the workplace and as mums with ambition.
Oh, thanks for saying mums.
Yeah, mums. Yeah.
So I think you're really right there. I think, you know, if gender parity was that, you know, was a woman problem, we'd have solved it by now, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
We'd have addressed it. We'd be having equal pay. And you're right that I guess a lot of men kind of feel left behind by the way things are changing, maybe feel discombobulated by it. They just don't know how to move with the times. And really, it's got to be about bringing them on board as allies, because otherwise things aren't going to change. We need that allyship.
And in fact, it's even more detrimental and more scarier than that, because what happens is then you've got Supreme Court judges in the US rolling things back in some sort of weird, you know, whether it's all lives matter or whether it's hashtag not all men, you get this pushback in society against some of these things. And I just think there's preparatory work to be done to not just the demand, but the enablement piece is really key in all of this.
I think it's almost like a defensiveness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
because what are you gonna do if you're saying I have to empower all these women? Well, isn't that me giving up my power somehow? Sorry, I'm going to have to plug myself in. Sorry.
No problem. What were you going to say, Tiffany?
No, it's fine. I'll wait for Umbar. Thanks, fine.
Are you able to edit, or are we going to be really human and keep this in and go look at her?
We are usually very human, aren't we, Tiffany?
There you go. I'm plugged in.
Okay. But yeah, no, I think we could talk to you forever. I think you bring such an interesting mix of the workplace and motherhood and confidence, and your experience as well. Are there any other experiences in your life that has defined your motherhood or defined the way you see the world?
Yeah, it would come back to my family, actually, and that social responsibility piece, and really taking motherhood very, very seriously as the jet fuel that powers how our next generation and society is going to be. And there were I think actually a lot of the discrimination that I've had has propelled me to be an even better mother, and to teach my daughter to have the agency that maybe I wasn't taught to have. Because I also, Tiffany, you know, while my parents said you can be anything you want, you can, you know, they'd also go, but be careful, don't rock the boat too much. That there were limitations even on that, and I'm kind of like, no, rock it hard, like, you know, and, you know, be punchy, and don't follow the crowd. And thankfully she's a teenager, and, you know, she's actually less susceptible to peer pressure than other children that I'm seeing, or even people in my generation were. And I think teaching our children, boys and girls, to be in their own power and agency and values is really important as mothers. That's what we can help nurture in them. And, you know, that has benefits on a number of levels, whether that is non-conformism is good, inclusion is good. You know, it's all going to push us towards more parity. And like I said, it's a movement, not a moment. So, you know, there's no one singular event that kind of made me go, right, this is it. But there have been a few moments. Like there was one time I wasn't resourced on a project, and the leader in the room said to me, well, I don't want her on the team because 4:45, you know, things hit the fan, and she's just going to bugger off to go and pick up her child from school. And in that way, I was really not. And you have no idea the support network that I have in place, right? And while I did maintain my boundaries of between 5 and, there are exceptions to things, and I have a really good support network. And I think I was telling you as well, we you know, I moved. I got divorced, so that was a big moment in my life that then even more ruthlessly I had to prioritize where I give my energy and my time. I didn't have anyone to pass the relay baton to, but I moved closer to my parents. And so, you know, they were able to pick her up on Wednesday afternoon, so she didn't have to go to after school club. I was doing a 4-day week, so on Fridays I would pick her up. So she was only 3 days a week going to after school club. You know, also for the after school club, I created a WhatsApp group of mothers who we could lean on each other if our trains were running late, and so that our kids wouldn't get taken to social services by the after school club, because they will wait for you for 20 minutes and then they take them to the council.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that was what happened.
Yes, and one lady, we learnt the hard way, because one lady was really traumatized and didn't get her child back till 10 o'clock that night, and had to fill out lots of papers. And so we were like, right, we are here for each other. And so, you know, find your communities, build your communities. Who are your support networks? You know, we don't naturally have that in extended families anymore. So how do we create our non-blood related, like, you know, family and community? And that's what's helped me a lot get through stuff. And it is those moments of people going, you can't, and I'll go, I'll show you I can. But I had to enable that I can with a lot of that support. And, you know, and this is why when we were introduced, I was just like, oh yes, I love you guys' energy and what you're doing, and imparting those stories and dialogue is some of those first steps. Naming it, talking about it, normalizing this helps us get closer to progress as well.
Well, the last time we spoke to you, you were telling us to write a book, and I keep saying to Tiffany,
you have to.
We should write a book.
You have to. Tiffany, come on, you got it. I don't, but that's fantastic, because you're discerning where you're going to give your energy.
Isn't it? Yeah, I have said that.
And could that wait till next year? Sure.
Yeah, but it's definitely I'm definitely glad that I think there's an exposure of motherhood now. And all over my LinkedIn, I'm just seeing people talking about being a mother and the mental load and the balance and the, you know, the discrimination. And it's good. We're having this conversation. It's a great way to start to you know, it's a great place to be. I think we'll start to kind of round up, because I think time is fast spent. Unless there's anything else you want to share with us, Amber?
Oh gosh, I could talk for England on this subject. So no, but put boundaries in, rein me in, because I could get quite evangelical about some things. And you know, the reality of the situation is we're all our own activists, and so you've got to self-advocate in your journey. But the more we're talking to each other about it, the more we can advocate for each other too. So I think there's so much power in that community. It also, Dr. Joe Dispenza, one of the books that I was talking about, talks about your neuroscience and your brain chemistry changes when you're with more people in a community. So yeah, like, support each other, nurture each other, build a community, build your allies around you. Your brain chemistry will change. And so we've got to have more of that as well.
Thank you. Oh, the typical final question will be, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Umbar Shakir on LinkedIn. I've been sharing I've had long-term health issues as well recently. So 3rd time cancer diagnosis. I'm 9 weeks after my hysterectomy. So I've had a hysterectomy, and so I've been sharing a lot of that journey on LinkedIn recently. I do keynote speeches as well. So mainly talking about humanizing technology to improve human experiences. And you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook, and I have my art is featured on a website as well, but I can give you my socials, and feel free to follow me or add me, or yeah, keep the conversation going, because I think that's so important as well. Like the engagement on social media, the conversations that we're having, the stories that we're sharing, which is why, yes, do the book, but do it do it when it's right for you, Tiffany. I'm 100%. I'm in it for your agency to
she's
do that.
Right as well about we're quite busy at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was saying, that sense of urgency, we don't have to buy into that. Yeah, it's great. And it will be valuable whenever it drops.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great way to look at it.
Do it in your own time. And
it will drop, guys. It will drop. This how
it will drop. It will drop. It's going to come. I know it. This is too powerful for it not to. So I have every belief in you guys that you'll be best selling at some point. So, but yeah, do it in your own time. Forgive yourself. Don't carry guilt for not doing something either. Make those choices and own your choices and own your journey. I think that's the main thing that I would talk about taking away. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn and DM me.
Yeah,
thank you.
Wow, what a time.
It's been amazing, hasn't it? And I think just thank you so much for being so open about your journey, for sharing all of the wisdom that you have with us. It's been fabulous.
Oh, thank you for inviting me and creating this space. It's amazing. So I'm really, I will be cheerleading you on.
Love it. All right.
Thank
you,
you,
guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.